coming up tonight. The Anthem hits Bermuda, we get rocked, and a bit groovy. It's all coming up, so let's set sail. Welcome to day 3 of the CruiseView from on board the Anthem of the Seas. Once again, I'm Picone, and today was Saturday, May 5th, 2018, Cinco de Mayo. And while it was Cinco de Mayo, there was not too much related to that on board, mainly just a simple sail in the Esplanade during the afternoon, partly because, for the first time, we finally made it to a port of call in the Anthem of the Seas. We officially arrived in Bermuda today. So, our location, obviously, we were in Kings Wharf, Bermuda, also known as the dockyard. That is the port area primarily used for cruise ships. Some of the small ones still can visit Hamilton on special occasions, but for the most part, all cruise ships go over to the dockyard. And arriving in Bermuda is a different scenario than most ports. There is a large amount of coral reefs surrounding Bermuda, which means that all ships have to take a bit of a roundabout way to get into the island. So we actually started our arrival a little before 6 a.m. this morning, finally docking at 8 a.m. And this afternoon, we then departed at 4 p.m. Took until about 5:30 that we finally got past the last bit of land, and probably a little bit closer to 6 that we're fully out of the Bermuda area. And for anyone that doesn't know, when the Quantum of the Seas first arrived, she was supposed to be the permanent New Jersey ship. She was going to stay here for good and be our ship, but of course things changed and she is not here. She is over in China, and the Anthem of the Seas here was supposed to be England's ship. But Bermuda was not ready for the Quantum of the Seas to arrive in the summer of 2015. They did not get their dredging done in time, so a switcheroo had to happen. The Quantum of the Seas went to China, while the Liberty of the Seas came over to spend the summer months in Bayonne handling the Bermuda route. And then in the fall, the Anthem of the Seas arrived, and by summer 2016, everything was all set for the Anthem to make its Quantum class debut in Bermuda. But it is still a very tight passage as you are entering and exiting the channel. There is a ton of coral reef. If you ever are sailing to Bermuda, be sure to watch the arrivals, because it's very exciting to watch just how close these massive ships actually get to coral reefs and other shallow parts of the ocean that are just feet away from the actual ship. And luckily, the weather cooperated, so the captain shouldn't have had too much difficulty seeing where he was headed. We had a sunrise at 6:27 a.m. this morning, and at 6 a.m. when we started our arrival, the sun was already lighting up the sky, so it was illuminating the entire passage into Bermuda. And then tonight we had a sunset at 8:01 p.m., well past the time that we departed. For the high today, it was listed as 74, and it certainly felt like it got to that. There were periods though that did feel a little bit cooler. The forecast called for sunny skies, but we did see once again some changing conditions. When we woke up, we had a very humid and overall just wet arrival to Bermuda, and that was accompanied by a lot of cloud cover and high winds. And while it didn't actually rain, there were clearly some rain-looking clouds out there, but those quickly dissipated once we were docked, and we just had a beautiful sunny day that slowly went back into some cloud cover in the afternoon. With this being a port of call day, of course, that meant the compass was a little bit different. There were fewer activities during the day because most people were ashore, and I was one of those with an excursion schedule today. We did the Rising Sun Catamaran Adventure. That was scheduled, I believe, from 9:30 to 12:30 was the time. That was scheduled for 9:30 a.m., ending about 12:30, and that involved a catamaran ride across the bay to a secluded beach where we got to swim, as well as go onto the shore a little bit to relax. And they had a variety of different activities available to do, such as snorkeling, paddleboarding, and kayaking. And one of the issues whenever you take these catamaran excursions, they're often crowded. No matter where you go, they always seem to overfill these boats, but in this case it was actually a rather empty boat. It was certainly plenty of space for everybody on board to have their space and spread out a bit, which you don't often get to do on these excursions. They usually do sell them to the max. And in addition to the space, which obviously makes the excursion more enjoyable, the crew was a blast as well, so that's always a positive. And with any beach excursion, you want to make sure you have enough time to actually enjoy the beach. And with today, going into it, we kind of thought it might be a little bit short, just 3 hours, and that included the time on the catamaran. But once everybody was in the water, everyone got to use as many activities as they wanted, do everything they wanted to, and people naturally just got back on the boat. And when it was time to depart, everybody had already been on the boat for about 5 minutes. So it was certainly plenty of time for us today. And the water was about 68, 70 degrees, so not really warm water, but not too chilly, just a little bit of a cold as you first got into it. And then after our water time, we got some complimentary rum swivels for the journey back to the ship. And along that journey, instead of going straight into the harbor, they took a slight detour right towards the Anthem of the Seas and gave us a really close-up shot of this beautiful, massive ship. And she certainly is a massive ship when you're looking at her from the water level like that. Following our excursion, we then took a little bit of time to walk around the dockyard. If you've never been to Bermuda before and aren't aware of what the dockyard is, this is actually a port area that was made specifically for the cruise ships to handle the increasing sizes of these ships that was starting to prevent them from making it to the cities, to the traditional cruise ports. And as part of this new development, they actually built out the whole area to have a variety of shopping and other activities for the passengers coming off of the cruise ships to help accommodate them and give them something to do right at the ships without needing to travel all over the island. So we took a bit of time to walk around, see the historic forts and various sites around here, as well as look in some shops. But in addition to all the stuff that is obviously here for the cruise passengers, this was also the center of attention for the island, as there was a special race going on today, I believe both running as well as bicycle. So this race is known as the end-to-end race, and it's a big deal in Bermuda. It's got a lot of attention, certainly a lot of festivities around it today, and that also caused some problems for people that were traveling around the island. We didn't hit any issues since we obviously used a boat that left directly from the port area and walked around the port area. But those that had excursions that were a little more distance or did a bus over to somewhere like Horseshoe Bay had a little more difficulty getting around, as some of the main roads were closed to accommodate that race. And this evening, the all aboard was at 3:30 with that 4 p.m. departure. Watching that then brought me straight up to 5:30 with our dinner. Once again, another casual night. We've had one formal night, 2 casual nights. Looking at the compass for tomorrow, it's showing casual again. So I have a feeling this will be another one of those sailings that does not have any kind of smart casual, just purely 2 formal, the rest casual. But for today's menu at least, it was a good menu, one that I've often found things on in the past. So for my starter, I began with the poblano pepper soup. And this was a soup I've had several times before and always enjoyed, but today's was exceptionally hot. Whoever they've got in the kitchen must really like spices, because just like yesterday's meal, which was surprisingly hot, today's had a ton of flavor and spice to it, which for me was a good thing, but probably caught a few people off guard, as it was much spicier than any of the ones I've had on other ships. And then for my entree, I did a pairing. I did both the lasagna al forno, a classic that is always good, along with the chicken cordon bleu, one of those meals that is typically good but does vary from ship to ship, and both of those were delicious as usual. For dessert, I ordered the warm dark chocolate cookie, which comes with a side of ice cream, as well as the lemon panna cotta. And in addition to our desserts, the head waiter brought over a special dessert for the table, a gigantic s'mores cake. This thing was massive and took up the entire middle of the table. It had a huge slab of cake along with what seemed like a lemon meringue icing to it and some marshmallows toasted, basically a s'mores. And when it was delivered to the table, they then drizzled chocolate syrup and caramel over the top of it. So that was delicious, and obviously that was a lot of food, so this was a huge filling meal for today, probably the biggest meal I've had on a cruise in a while. And then immediately following dinner, we then headed over to the Royal Theatre at the opposite end of the ship for tonight's showing, our reservation showing of We Will Rock You. And as I mentioned yesterday, that is an absolutely incredible show. The cast is incredible, the singing is fantastic, the set designs, the costumes, everything is top notch for this show. It really is a very well done show. And the actual story of the play itself is not the most complex. Obviously, it's not another version of The Gift, something a bit confusing. It was a very straightforward and easy to understand show. But most importantly, there was a ton of humor built into it, which just adds a whole nother level of entertainment to any show. And I think that's really part of what made it succeed, is that it had a very Columbus-like feel of just being a musical, but with a very hard edge of comedy to it at the same time. And in addition to just overall being a good show, there were a couple things that I found kind of surprising about it. They did a few things that were new and interesting, and a few that are kind of adaptations of other ships. So the Royal Theatre, like Quantum and Harmony, has a massive video wall in the back of the theater. Allows them to put anything they want up there, basically make the entire scene as dynamic as they need it to be. And they took full advantage of that during this show again. They at one point even had a scene that I personally found rather amusing to see, where it clearly represented the Royal Esplanade, but meant to fit into this futuristic environment, and it was an absolute perfect replication. That there's no doubt that was the inspiration for that backdrop. And taking some cues from 270, they had a scene where the background featured some people to expand the size of the cast, similar to something we saw in Starwater, except this time the people were not realistic, so it was clear it was not just more of the cast, but it was interesting to see them take that inspiration. They also had a pair of interesting scenes in which a cast member appears on the video screen rather than actually on stage to simulate a video call happening during the show. So that was another interesting element, because we know as 270, the original cast filmed those scenes that were used, and they are permanently there. They are still there sailing in Quantum, even though the cast has likely not been there for a while. These seemed, as far as I could tell, to be the actual cast members at the moment. So I don't know if they were backstage in front of a green screen recording those live, or if they recorded at the beginning of the sailing, but it certainly seemed like it was the actual cast members in those video calls. And the last element that I found kind of interesting was, at one scene towards the end, they actually bring a motorcycle out to go for a ride. A scene that on its own was very impressive, but after seeing Grease, you can tell it was the clear inspiration for how they pulled off the drive-in scene. It looked like the exact same headlights, the same kind of style of movement to the vehicle. It was definitely the first attempt at something that evolved and made Grease possible. And that's something that when you start to see more of these shows, you really start to pick up on some of these elements that evolve from one show to the next one. So We Will Rock You is a 2-hour show. I believe the compass lists as an hour and 52 minutes, but basically till you're done, it's 2 hours. And that, starting at 8 o'clock, took us till 10 o'clock. Then directly across the hall in the music hall was then Groovy Town, of course. Saw it on Quantum of the Seas. Caught a little bit of it on Anthem last year. This time it seemed very similar to the other ones. Once again, not really my style, but it certainly felt a little more like the Centrum parties in terms of the amount of stuff being thrown out and some of the ways the cruise director staff were being used in the show is a little more reminiscent of the traditional shows than that very hard groovy town edge that we saw in the past. But unlike the other showings of Groovy Town, Chloe, the cruise director, was not actually involved in it. It was entirely her staff that managed this show, which made it a little bit different than the past ones.
Do you want to see him shake that stuff, everybody? No, I said, do you want to see him shake that stuff?
And that lasted, it was, I believe, 45 minutes. It might have gone to an hour, but I ended up leaving that to head over to Spectra's Cabaret again, 10:45 and 2:70. That show, of course, is shown repeatedly throughout the sailing because it is a small venue, and this sailing, at least, even if you do not have a reservation, it is not too difficult to get a spot. You obviously won't get the prime spots, but you can certainly show up last minute and still get into the venue and find a seat to sit and watch that show. And now, while I record this at about 1:15 a.m., we are 45 minutes away from the clocks going back this time. So we're going to gain an extra hour of sleep, which we lost 2 nights ago. So hopefully I'll get a little extra sleep tonight. It's certainly been a very busy sailing up to this point, so that extra hour of sleep can certainly come in handy. So that about does it for today's Compass. But we also have an interview today. Today I got to speak with one of the leads from tonight's big show, and the one I saw yesterday as well, We Will Rock You. So today I am joined by Ross, who plays Galileo in We Will Rock You. Thank you for joining me.
How are you? Nice to meet you.
Yeah. So how did you get started in acting?
So acting, I went to drama school when I was 18. I moved from my hometown in Northern England, went down to London and went to a school called Arts Ed, which is specialised in musical theatre, and I got a BA honours degree in musical theatre. So a lot of hard work, a lot of training for 3 years, a lot of dancing, a lot of acting, a lot of singing. Kind of opened me up to a lot of different areas of work. So yeah, very intense drama school training. So it's hard work, but that's where it all kind of began. And before that, I was always involved with different bands and my musical family. My mum plays piano, my dad plays guitar. So I've always had that background around me.
Yeah.
So that was kind of where I sort of saw myself going, and I've always sort of had that idea in my head of that's where I wanted to be an actor. Yeah.
So what was your original exposure to cruising?
So this is my first ever cruise. So this is the first ever cruise contract I've done. I've touched on a few different ships only through guest entertainer work and working with different harmony groups and different things. So I'd only had like a short run at it, really. Not a big contract like this is. So it's 9 months on board. It's a lot of hard work, and obviously you're a crew member, and there's a lot of different responsibilities that come with that, as well as working on the stage. So it's all pretty new to me, but it's a fantastic ship, and I'm glad to be here.
So We Will Rock You is based on the music of Queen. So what was your familiarity with Queen and the Broadway play itself prior to joining?
Okay, so when I graduated drama school when I was 21, back in 2009, I was lucky enough to go into the West End cast of We Will Rock You. At the time, I was in the ensemble. I was a dancer, and I was actually covering the lead role that I'm playing at the minute of Galileo. And it was an amazing experience for me for my first job in such a big theatre, the Dominion Theatre in London. And from then on, I was on as an understudy, and I was playing the part every now and again, but not actually having it as my own. So it was nice to have that experience, and it's nice now to come back to it after 8 years and come full circle and do it all again. It's great.
So what made you decide that you wanted to do this at sea?
At sea, I think it was just the experience from before, and obviously having the role of Galileo as my own. You know what I mean? So I was an understudy before, so it's nice to have it my own and make it my own, and sort of have a bit of freedom to do what I wanted to do with it. So yeah. And who doesn't like singing Queen?
Yeah. So could you give a little bit of background on the concept of We Will Rock You for anyone that hasn't seen it?
So anybody who hasn't seen We Will Rock You, it's kind of set in the future. There is no more rock music. Rock music is banned. The guitars are banned, and it's being ran by these two people in charge, which are Commander Khashoggi and Killer Queen. There's two rebel rockers, which are Scaramouche, who plays opposite me, and myself, Galileo, who kind of, they go on this journey and they meet these different bohemians, they're called. They meet some other characters along the way to try and bring back rock music, to try and find rock music again. As I say, it's set in the future. It's very funny. It's written by Ben Elton, and the show itself, it's going on a lot of different journeys, and it's spreading all across Europe and different things, and it's been a massive success. So it's kind of set in the future. With all the music of Queen, all the classic hits that you all know and love, and then big old finale at the end with We Are the Champions and We'll Rock You and Bohemian Rhapsody. It's great fun and a great time, and it's pretty loud.
When people think of Broadway and the West End, they often think a little more classical. What is it like to transition that style into hard rock?
It's difficult. It's I kind of try and keep my options open to anything like that. I mean, there's chances of, I auditioned for Les Mis and different things like that, Phantom of the Opera, those type of musicals, and they are all a bit different. And I think it's important as an actor that you always go back and you get singing lessons to train in that style. I've been quite lucky over the years to have done a lot of rock musicals. I've just finished on the UK tour of Rent last year in the UK, and Rock of Ages as well. So I've kind of always had this rock background around me, and I think it's important that at the same time you do touch on the classical side of it, because you never know what can happen with regards to auditions and shows that are coming up in the West End or on Broadway. So it is a little bit tricky making that transition, but I think as an actor you need to be on top of your game and be prepared for anything.
Yeah. There's several bands that have their own musical. You've got ABBA, you've got Queen.
Yeah.
What band would you love to see have their own musical?
Bon Jovi or Journey. I think that would be a really good idea for a musical. I've always wanted to write a Bon Jovi musical, but I just don't have the mind for it. So something like that. That'd be great. If you could do that and possibly cast me in it, that'd be great.
Yeah. So what is your favorite scene from We Will Rock You?
My favorite scene? Probably Who Wants to Live Forever. The whole van scene with myself and Scaramouche. It's quite intimate, and it's quite you see a very different side to the character of Galileo, and you see a very different side to Scaramouche as well. It's the first time they kind of meet and they have that connection with each other, and it's just it's kind of, you don't really see that anywhere else in the show, and it's very intimate and it's very real. It's very truthful, and Who Wants to Live Forever is, that it's a very nice top ballad in the show, and it's a lot different to any other song in the show, and for that reason I enjoy doing that one the most. Yeah.
So your time on the ship is almost coming to an end. You have another sailing with 3 showings of We Will Rock You?
Yes, we got one more cruise next week, 3 more shows, and then we're out of here. So at the minute we've got 2 casts on board. They're opening The Gift, and while we're doing We Will Rock You, and then once we finish next week, they will take over We Will Rock You. And it's exciting having 2 casts on board. It's a little bit crazy, but that kind of process all happens while we've been here. They've been rehearsing out in Miami, so they come on the ship and take over, and eventually take over both the shows, and then we head off home. Yeah.
So once you leave the ship, do you have any future plans yet?
I don't know. Possibly. Well, I'm in the middle of writing my own guest entertainer show. So I'm trying to get that running and up and running at the minute. So I might come back to a ship at some point. That's the main kind of priority at the minute. Being on the ship, I've realised a lot how I've really enjoyed singing with the band, not just doing the shows of We Will Rock You, but being on the stage and being with a live orchestra as well, and something that I've always wanted to really delve into, and it's opened up a massive opportunity for me to do that on this ship. So trying to go down that route a little bit at the minute. Lots of gigging, lots of singing, so I might be back on a ship at some point soon. Yeah.
So is there anything else that you'd like to tell the viewers?
Trying to think. No, just come on board this fantastic ship, Anthem of the Seas. It's a cracking ship, and it's been awesome working here with Royal Caribbean.
All right. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much.
So I want to thank them for taking the time, as I always do. And of course, this week I've told you is the last week for this cast. This is their last sailing. New casts coming on board, so they've got an extra hectic week of things going on with this transition. So that makes it even more important to thank them for taking that time. But that does it for today's episode of the Cruise View. Once again, I'm Picone. Thanks for watching. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for Sea Day, and stay tuned for the links.